Good evening, everybody. This is Seraphim Henish, American in Exile, coming to you this evening, Thursday, from Moscow, Russia. I hope everybody is doing well. I wanted to come on because it seemed like it was time to make a video about some of the things that have been going on, especially over the last 10, 15 days. And of course, we must start with the amazing re-election of Donald Trump to be the 47th president of the United States of America. And this news was very welcomed by me personally and by many others that I know, both in America and I think in Russia as well. Though right away, of course, in both places, the news media, in terms of looking for things to do, began to post all sorts of pieces trying to criticize what is happening and what is going to happen. And so I want to go over some of these stories and try to offer some kind of perspective that might actually be helpful. I am trying to steer sort of a middle course as much as I can, and I realize that that's probably not possible because I am a very big Trump fan, and I strongly believe in the things that he talks about as being necessary. So a lot of what I say is obviously going to come from that viewpoint, and if you're not interested in hearing that viewpoint, there are certainly others with different viewpoints that might be more satisfactory. However, I think it's important. I think it's important to look at all viewpoints, and I think it's important to pay attention to my own because I've been doing a bit of analysis and observation for several years, and I do seem to get it right once in a while, at least once in a while enough to make it worthwhile. So let's take a look. First of all, the election was what we would probably call a clear mandate. I don't think I would call it a landslide technically. Trump won with about 4.5 to 5 million votes more than Kamala Harris, and he won with a 312 to 226 electoral vote majority, which is a mandate. It's very clear lead, and in basically every swing state he won in. And actually, he won by quite a remarkable margin. It was probably closest in Pennsylvania, but in states that I thought were going to be much closer, like Nevada and Arizona, for example, he won with a very clear majority, 5-6 points in some cases. Michigan was a little closer. That was probably the closest of all of them, but he still won with a clean majority. No need for recounts or anything like that. And the spirit of those of us who support him has been, understandably very high about this. High to ecstatic, depending on who you talk to. And I try not to be too ecstatic because basically we've only gotten this far. It's only the election. We still haven't gotten through the transition, the inauguration, and the beginning of the execution of various policies. But like many other people, I've gotten involved in the political backwash and the news backwash. Really is more media backwash than it is actually politics, because right now all that's happening is basically President Trump is getting his cabinet set together. Now that cabinet is remarkable. We had a piece, I just get this up to read. We had a piece from Fox News that listed the people that are involved in this. It is quite a remarkable candidate, a very remarkable cabinet. So let's go down through the names, and I will post them in graphics. Okay, so picks for the Trump cabinet are as follows. Chief of Staff. Let's try it again. The picks that Trump has made for his cabinet that are publicly announced as Fox News reports it, are as follows. The chief of staff is to be Susie Wiles, who is apparently an excellent organizer and, very well suited for the job. Elise Stefanik is to be the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. National Security Advisor Michael Waltz. Border Czar Tom Homan, ambassador to Israel, former governor of Arkansas Mike Huckabee. The Environmental Protection Agency Administrator is Lee Zeldin, former candidate for the governor of New York. The Middle East Envoy is to be Stephen Witkoff. The White House Counsel is to be William McGinley. CIA Director John Ratcliffe, the Department of Government Efficiency, this is a new cabinet post, is to be co-led by Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy. Secretary of Defense pick is none other than Pete Hegseth. Homeland Security Advisor is Kristi Noem. Deputy Chief of Staff Dan Scavino. Stephen Miller will be the Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy and Homeland Security Advisor. James Blair, Deputy Chief of Staff for Legislative, Political, and Public Affairs. Taylor Budovich, Deputy Chief of Staff for Communications and Personnel. Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, former representative of Hawaii, former Democrat, now a Republican. The Secretary of State, Florida Senator Marco Rubio. And the U.S. Attorney General pick is Matt Gaetz. I do believe that there will be that they will all be confirmed come confirmation time when Trump takes office. They will probably be confirmed rather quickly, with a little bit of resistance about Matt Gaetz as people try to throw up his sex scandals that he already passed through and dealt with. They'll probably do that. He'll be fine, I imagine. A lot of these names I know, a lot of these names I do not know. The ones that are particularly of interest, I think, from the geopolitical side, especially from the point of view of Russia and the kind of generally accepted set of ideas that I see from a lot of people here, that I see and hear from a lot of people here. There's a lot of criticism around people like Elise Stefanik, Mike Huckabee. I'm surprised there isn't more controversy about him. Because I think he's a bigger supporter of Israel and more notable than Elise Stefanik is, but Elise made more news in the last year. The CNN is complaining about Kristi Noem, and some of our anti-neocon folks are complaining about Marco Rubio. I am one of those. I'm concerned about him, but overall, I think what has to happen, what has to be understood, is what this range of picks actually means and who it means it for. It is easy to get, especially when it comes to the United States, I think it is very easy to give in to the idea that somehow the United States is guilty for existing and that it's not doing its job unless it caves into everything that the rest of the world wants of it. Now, there is certainly an issue about the United States in its neocon, neo-lib aspect, where it could do with a lot of humility and not be, world police anymore. And I agree with that. However, Joe Biden's administration is full of people that essentially did everything they could. It was like a national/international apology tour on steroids by putting the most weird, strange, sexually deranged people in posts like this that you could possibly do. Like, you've got a cross-dressing admiral who his name is Richard, but he insists on calling himself Rachel, and he insists that you call him Rachel too, Levine. And that other fellow whose name I can't remember right now that doesn't know what he is and wears raging red lipstick and steals women's luggage from airports. This was the guy that was put in charge of nuclear waste disposal. And it just, there's God has a sense of humor even among some of our most feckless people. That Biden put this guy in this post, and he didn't last very long because he had to leave because he was stealing women's luggage on his trips. So refreshing. One of the great things about these picks is that there's not a wokester in them. These are solid people. They are men who know they are men. They are women who know they are women. You know, that's as it should be. I shouldn't even be giving credit for that. It's just that after the wildness that we have seen in the last 4 years, it was like a trip through the Twilight Zone, seeing all this kind of stuff. So I think for many of us, just out of the gate, this is going to be a refreshing situation that we have real men and real women running posts in the United States government and cabinet again. And that alone ought to lead to some resumption of sanity in our country and possibly as it deals with world affairs. Reactions are interesting, though. Coming from the United States, for example, CNN has a piece why Trump is trying to outrage Washington with his controversial cabinet picks. And so the analysis written by Stephen Collinson is kind of portraying the idea that Trump is deliberately trying to piss people off, and that is the reason he is picking these people. Um, Also, there is the similar kind of criticism coming from various reporters at RT. Now, if you're in the United States, you may find that you have to jump through a few hoops to get Russia Today's reports. And I should be very careful to remind you guys, I worked at RT for a while and I got to see how it behaves from the inside, for its editorial angle, especially for the English TV channel. But the website in English is not terribly different. It is one thing to bring news from a Russian perspective, and I would say that it is another thing to bring news from RT's perspective. Um, I don't really feel like RT does an adequate job covering things from a Russian perspective. It is more like what happens in some ways if you put the Washington Post inside Russia with that kind of liberalism and give them an added dose of, guys, let's write about this in the tune of everybody hates us. Um, if you start with that, then you can start to kind of understand RT's editorial angle right now, which is basically everybody hates us, and what will snarky, snide reporting, especially from very well written and well versed English writers, English language writers, is what we need here. I personally disagree, as you can probably guess, but that's what they're doing. Okay, that's what they're doing. And so we have headlines like China hawks and Ukraine aid critics, key nominations for Trump's upcoming administration. We have Ukrainian draft dodger makes desperate escape from recruitment officers. Okay, that's a pretty standard fare for reading here. Trump's win will not change U.S. stance on Ukraine, so saith, according to this, Sergei Lavrov, saying, according to this piece, Washington will always seek to control everything that happens in the areas bordering NATO territory. He may be right. I have no reason to say that he has no reason to say that, because that's what the United States has been doing. He said, okay, we'll go on with this. It was broadcast on Russia 1 on Wednesday. Lavrov suggested that Washington will always seek to control everything that is happening in the areas bordering NATO territory, no matter who the president is. And his direct quote, probably translated, but let's hear it. I have no doubt that they will want to keep these processes under their control. Ellipsis. So he said some other things and then went on. Washington's attitude towards Ukrainian affairs and European affairs will not change in principle, in the sense that Washington will always strive to keep under its watchful eye everything that happens in the areas near NATO and the NATO area itself. This comes after recent conflicts from Trump, who has promised to end the Ukraine conflict as soon as he returns to the White House. Okay. I'm not going to get into the rest of the piece, but the reason is not. I don't want to do that to say what you must think about Sergei Lavrov. As a negative thing. I have tremendous respect for him and tremendous respect for President Putin and Zakharova. And I'm not saying that because I live in Russia and that the state is watching me. I'm saying it because I actually really do. I've been trying to get a chance to meet with them and talk with them and learn from them because those three have been the kind of beacons of hope, uh, because they are all eminently rational and sane people. And yet they are also human beings, and it is difficult not to get a little cynical. Um, and I'm not sure that Lavrov is right about this. There's a very good chance that he will be. He will be proven right. Very, very good chance. Why not? You've got Marco Rubio, who has had a neocon history. He bothered me enough that I went through and actually got a paid subscription to Twitter so that I could reach Tulsi Gabbard and Tucker Carlson directly and tell them, please, please, please don't nominate him. Please don't let Mr. Trump nominate him because he's neocon. Tulsi would be better for Secretary of State than this guy. However, and I think I wasn't the only one that was saying all this kind of stuff because if you were following the news this week, you'll notice that Marco was about to be announced for several days before he was actually announced. But he was announced after Tulsi was announced as Director of National Intelligence. So my take on that is that Tulsi's post is going to have an awful lot to do with what gets to Marco. Our intelligence agencies, the American intelligence community, has been severely, severely politicized. And it has been deeply invested in the idea that all things Russia and President Putin are bad, just because if it has the word Russia and if it has the word Putin or P or T or U or whatever, it automatically is bad just because Russia, very irrational reasoning, but one that has been it's been followed up with weapons shipments to Ukraine, this long dragged out war with Zelensky to this day, begging England and France to beg the United States, to beg Biden in his final days of his term to allow long-range strikes deep into Russian territory, which I personally would not like. We're already getting drone attacks 20 kilometers outside Moscow, like 15 miles south of my home. That's as close as I want them to be. They've come into the city from time to time, and it could be so much worse, but I don't want that either. Got a family, and the United States is not getting drone attacked, but we are, and sometimes people are killed because of it. Sometimes people are hurt because of it. And Zelensky seems, for whatever reason, determined to not give up. And he apparently thinks he can actually make Europe do whatever he wants. He's acting as the most powerful person in the European community, and he's not even in the European Union. We could talk about him probably way too long for this video, so I'll try to leave him alone for now. Anyway, so we've got things like the RT pieces, that are, there are some positive ones. There are neutral ones. Trump picks Ukraine aid critic for attorney general. So this is good. Matt Gaetz previously voiced concern over the supply of U.S. military aid to Kiev. And for that matter, so did Marco Rubio in that $61 billion aid package vote that happened early this year, back in January. He opposed it. So does that mean that he's no longer a neocon? Probably not, but he seemed to at least recognize that this particular conflict is not one that Ukraine can win, and that it makes no sense to just dump American money into a pit. Maybe it's only for that, but we'll take it. It didn't matter because the measure passed anyway. Other people voted for it. But it does suggest that on the bright side, maybe Rubio's softness in terms of not being a strict, damn the torpedoes neocon, means that he will be better able to reflect the interests of his boss. And the converse is the possibility that he may not be able to withstand neocon pressure because it is there. It's already there. John Bolton's already speaking in his usual manner. We need to go to war with everybody. Everything will be wonderful, all that kind of stuff. And I'm sure there are other people that are doing the same thing. Certainly NATO is worried. The NATO administration is worried, and they should be. So the further issue about this with the cabinet picks that is interesting geopolitically is, at least for some people, it concerns Israel. Now, why all this U.S. support for Israel? And it's easy to put the tag Zionism on it. It's very, very easy, especially for us in geopolitical land who think that everybody, we think we're the intelligent people and we think that everybody thinks just like us, or we forget that most people don't. You tell me, write in your comments if you wish. Do you really think of Israel in the terms of advancing Zionism and the Jewish conspiracies and all of that kind of stuff? Or do you think about it as a different way? One of the things that it's been marketed as to most Americans is that it is a stable, friendly to the West. Sometimes they even say democracy, though I don't think it is. But they say it's a stable, pro-Western, pro-American democracy in a very unstable region of the world, namely the Middle East. And I can't say that there's no truth to that, but it's less than that, of course. And, I will certainly admit that. I am not a big supporter of Israel, but I'm not, let's put it this way. I neither support Israel nor Palestine in this situation. I find them both to be incorrigibly consumed with hatred toward each other. And my own personal view is that the only thing that is going to stop their conflict is an intervening move from some very dispassionate, much more powerful entity. And for me, I think that honestly would only have to be, it could only be China. And I don't think China will really want to involve itself in Israel anyway. It has no reason to. But China has its own particular ideological profile, and neither Zionism nor whether it's Jewish Zionism or Christian Zionism, nor Islam in a militant sense, Sunni or Shia, these things don't figure with the Chinese. They seem to look at the rest of the world as who can we do business with? A power like that in control of the region might be even better than what it was when the region was controlled by the British 100 years ago, where there was an overseeing power that was basically getting people to behave. Right or wrong, it's not like it is now, right? Right or wrong, okay? I'm not saying that the British are the best or anything like that. I'm just saying that the conflict began once you let these very volatile people start interacting with each other without control. The same thing happened with India and Pakistan. So, and for more or less the same reasons. There was Hindu-Muslim. Israel, it was Jewish and Muslim. And the whole added issue of whose land is this, made even worse by the fact that both Jewish and Muslims consider that region of the world to be extremely holy, extremely important to them. Christians too, though Christians are kind of the descendant of the Jews, and Christians are not, many of us, many Protestants tend to support Israel because that's where Zionism sprang from. At least Christian Zionism sprang from Protestant Christianity. I think that even Jewish Zionism as it exists probably got its start or was encouraged by the development of Christian Zionism, and the vision of the repatriation of the Jewish people to their ancestral homeland, the Promised Land. while conveniently leaving out the part that Jesus Christ actually said they would be dispersed and never be back at home again. Um, it is what it is. So that's how we have it. Well, anyway, we have several significant members in the Trump cabinet who are um, very big supporters of Israel. And I'm going to say it that way. I'm not going to say Zionist because I don't know, and I can research it, but I'm just going to leave it as big supporters of Israel. Okay, and I'll make a few additional comments. Elise Stefanik um, is certainly one. Michael Waltz is Lutheran, and he's a national security advisor pick. So he's going to be influenced by that probably. Mike Huckabee, very, very much, because he was a minister, Baptist minister. And the Baptists in the United States often have a very, very strong streak of Christian Zionism in their ranks. I can't say that Mike necessarily had it in his particular group, but it's possible. And I do know from what is reported that the Israeli people absolutely love him. So, I guess he's been a really great supporter of their cause. Let me see the rest of these people. There doesn't seem to be, maybe Matt Gaetz is also one of these that would be a big supporter. The other ones are going to be generally supportive of Israel, I think, just because most Americans tend to be that way. You have to understand that Zionism, I touched on this before, but if you ask most Americans, are you a Zionist? They will probably look at you strangely and wonder what you're talking about, or just say no, because they either don't know what that is, or they've heard bad things about it and they probably don't want, they're probably not part of it, and neither do they want to be associated with it. So they would probably just say no, and I'm not a Zionist. Do you support Israel? Yes. Most people would probably say that. What happened last year with the October 7th attacks that Hamas launched on Israel, it was very, very severe, very bad. Obviously, as everybody knows, it triggered a real war, not just, it wasn't just shooting rockets at each other for a few days. It's still going on a year later, more than a year later. And with great ferocity. Israel has expanded their battles into Lebanon. They've expanded their battles into launching attacks directly against Iran. Iran has reciprocated in this way. So this is a widening conflict. It is very, very serious. But one of the things that happened when this attack happened was that there were all of a sudden a lot of pro-Palestinian demonstrators making themselves known in New York, including a whole bunch of wannabes that probably had no idea what a Palestinian was, but they were activists, leftists, and very much happy to demonstrate for the Palestinian cause because big bad Israel is oppressing them. You don't have to say much to a leftist to get them to become an activist in any particular cause. Leftists tend to want to throw rocks at strong religious groups, strong traditional religious groups. And even though there are a lot of people that claim to be Jewish that they're not following the commandments in any way, shape, or form and violating most of them, if not all of them. Judaism is still seen by, I think, a lot of people in America as a traditional religion, seen from afar, seen by people who are not Jewish. Especially groups like the Orthodox Jewish people, the Hasidim, and other groups like that. But also, the group cares enough to stay in touch with its ancient traditions in some way. And for a leftist, that is poison. So that's who you oppose, just like you would oppose Christians if you're a leftist. Christians that follow the faith are danger. Russia is danger because Russia is becoming increasingly Christian. The Russian Orthodox Church is becoming increasingly influential, and it might just make more women not want to abort their children, and so that means that women are being enslaved. This is how the leftist reasoning goes. So anyway, there was a whole lot of protest, and it really surprised me because I'm familiar with the Palestinian resistance, the lobby. My first parish when I was baptized in the Orthodox Church was all Palestinian, Lebanese, Syrian, people, and they showed me quite a bit about what is really taking place in Israel and the atrocities that are directed against the Palestinian people. There's the slow takeover of their territories, even though those are supposed to be Palestinian lands. Why are there all these Israeli settlements springing up and roads going through the lands and walls, preventing Palestinians from going from one part of their land to another because some Israeli settlement is in that place and it's fiercely defended? Things like this, and more and more. There are many Antiochian Orthodox priests who will tell you all kinds of stories about this because they know about it, they hear about it, and so on. Father Josiah Trenham, for one, he spoke about it. But why? Does this mean that the United States is taking an unconditionally pro-Israel, anti-Iran, neocon approach to the Middle East? I don't know. But I would suspect that the answer is probably a little bit more nuanced. I'm going to propose what it is, and maybe time will show me to be right. Maybe time will show me to be wrong. Let's find out. The way I see it, and the way Saudi Arabia sees it, have two things in common. Saudi Arabia sees that one of the countries that is very important to bringing a peaceful state to the Middle East is Iran. And Iran and Saudi Arabia have not gotten along before. It was China that that got them to negotiate a resolution to their conflict and start working together. So Iran is one country that is a part of this. Now, many Americans don't realize this about Iran, but this is a very technologically advanced country, very sophisticated. Yes, it is Shia Muslim. It has some, let's say that at least there are certainly accusations of human rights violations, particularly regarding women. I can't say much more than that because if I do, I'm only saying what other people say. I've never been to this country. I'm grateful now because technically, since I hold Russian citizenship, I think I can go. I'm just not particularly interested in traveling to Iran these days, but I could, and it would probably be very informative in terms of getting to know what it's really like on the ground there. Just like when I came to Russia, I got to know what it's really like on the ground here. So Iran is a big part of it. Iran is important. The other country that is really important is Israel itself. And if you look at the nature of the fighting going on in the Middle East, it is really these two powers that are against each other. Now, one of my friends and colleagues, students, is of the opinion that it is not Iran and Israel, but that Iran is a proxy of Russia eventually, or is or will be, and that Israel is a proxy of the United States, or the United States is a proxy to Israel, depending on your point of view. I see it both ways sometimes. And I can't say that there's no truth to that, but I just want to look at it in terms of these two players. Because without Iran was kind of going along without Russian support for a while, and now Russian support is increasing. I should say with less Russian support. Now it is increasing. Israel has always had United States support, but in this conflict, that support is decreasing in some ways. Biden has been less than 100% committal on an issue that Prime Minister Netanyahu wants him to be fully committal on. And Netanyahu, for his part, appears to me to have lost his mind. Perhaps understandably, maybe he really is truly sick of every year or two there's another attack, and this last one was so bad that he decided, okay, this is where it ends. Okay, I mean, I can't say that I wouldn't have the same point of view if I were him. So, okay, we do have to try to put ourselves in other people's places about this. And I have to say, again, to my geopolitical interest brothers and sisters, not everything is cynicism. Politics does break down to people. It breaks down to how they actually be, how they feel, what their experience is. And certainly there are string pullers behind the scenes that influence opinion. Um, but how would you feel if your country was attacked and 1,000 of your people were killed and brutalized and raped and all this in most brutal ways? What would you do? What would you do? So it's interesting asking the American listeners, especially liberal American listeners, what would you do? Especially with people like that lipstick wearing guy who doesn't know who he is that was put in charge of um, nuclear waste. Like he took some of it. That is such a funny story. It's funny. Like if you don't laugh at it, you have to be absolutely outraged that somebody that wrong could be put in such a position as what Biden did to him. Woke is just, as President Trump said, everything woke turns to S blank blank T. You can fill in the words yourself. So I'm circling this topic without saying what I think. Israel is very important to peace in the region. Iran is very important to peace in the region. And some of the criticism that is coming out about the United States having such unequivocal support for Israel seems to me to be making the assumption that we're supposed to be supporting somebody else. And the question is, who? Who would you support? And one of the questions was, well, why doesn't the United States approach Iran? Trump did. He actually did. You may remember that there was an altercation, I think, after Soleimani was taken out. But Trump was trying to do the same thing with Iran that he did with Kim Jong-un, where he's putting increased rhetoric, increased pressure on them, and at the same time offering them a chance to talk, to normalize relations. Iran struck back and destroyed a Predator drone, if I'm not mistaken. And then all of the king's horses, if you will, all the military guys were looking for a reason to expend ordnance on Iranian people. And they had a whole attack set up, and they asked, right before President Trump was going to authorize it, he asked a question. He said, how many Iranians will this attack kill? And they said, well, we think at least 150 or so. And he said, well, how many Americans did they kill when they did their attack? 0. Trump's like, if they didn't kill any of us, why should we kill them? Don't do the attack. And I think, if I remember correct, he let that be known, and again reached out to the Iranian leadership. Let's talk. We're ready to talk. Let's try to do something. And the Iranians didn't want it. Now, does that mean that we should think that the Iranians are incorrigible and that they should be attacked and all this kind of stuff, especially by Israel? I personally don't think so. I think the Iranians have a great deal of baggage, with their Islamic revolution, the change in relations with both Israel and the United States from being very close friends and allies to being the ones that are burning flags and saying that America is the great Satan and Israel is the accomplice, or maybe Israel is the great Satan and America is the accomplice. There's a whole lot there that for them to agree to talk to us while we support Israel, it would be an enormous sellout. And I don't think that the leadership of Iran has moved through enough generations for them to have a person come to power that says, you know what? Maybe enough is enough. Maybe, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this kind of stuff? Maybe we should talk to them. That might happen this term. But it won't happen without Israel at least being strong. Now, I think that what I mean by strong is not the same as what Israel is doing right now. What I mean is an Israel that has a strong defense, not a strong let's go kill everybody around us attitude. And I think this is going to be a big problem for President Trump, because somehow he has got, if he wants to make peace in the region, He has to quell the warmongers. And right now, Netanyahu is a warmonger. It's not all Hamas. Hamas did this, but Israel did it before. Then Hamas did it. It just goes back and forth for 80 years. And who's at this point, who even knows who started what and who even cares? The point is, who is going to have the humility and, quite frankly, the balls enough to say, we will not do this? Because that kind of commitment takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage to stop fighting when you know your enemy is probably going to take advantage of your pause to fight you. But that's probably exactly what is needed. And President Trump is going to have to deal with this in such a way that gets Israel to stop fighting and attacking, and possibly to give Iran and its proxies a moment enough of pause to begin talks. The Abraham Accords were already beginning during the end of Trump's presidency and the beginning of the Biden term. And the Iranians pretty much scotched it by supplying Hamas with this huge cache of weapons to be able to attack Israel last year. So it drove a wedge between Saudi Arabia and Israel, who were normalizing relations at that time. So the question, support for Israel, Zionism, I kind of think not. There are Zionists that are going to be trying to use this kind of stuff for their own purposes. I have a very negative opinion about the people as I understand them, because they don't act like people of God. Okay, that's just how I see it. They do not act like people who serve God, because they don't serve God. For them, their little state is what matters, it seems, and they have an enormously, seriously prejudiced view against the Palestinian people, but it is the Palestinian people whose lands they took, and took rather brutally. And so it is kind of amazing and sadly astounding that after the atrocities that the Jewish people suffered in Nazi Germany, that all they seem to have done is learned how to turn the same tricks of the trade on some other people. And I guess it is too much to say that Israel should know better, the people that went back into that region, that they should know well enough to know that they are stealing other people's land. They are appropriating land that was not voluntarily offered to them. And there is a problem inherent in having an attitude that something belongs to me just because my ancestors used to live here. Okay? That doesn't fly. That's a liberal, these days that is seen as a total liberal left-wing wingnut nonsense job, making reparations to slaves, slave families and stuff for something that ended 160 years ago. It's just irrational. It's just absolutely irrational. So I have no real support for Israel in terms of its Zionist ambitions and its nationalist ambitions, but I do think that it is a state that has been established. Ideally, I think it should exist within at least 1948 boundaries, or at least 1967 boundaries. And I also honestly think that it would be better if the Palestinians were given a much better piece of ground, because they've got kind of the junky desert area that's difficult to cultivate, where the Israeli side has much better situation to cultivate things. So there are all kinds of problems there. But supporting Israel, yes, I support an Israel that stops doing this kind of behavior. And it can certainly be strong. It certainly can and should defend itself, but within its own borders, and not attacking everybody under the sun. And I think that part of this, you've got the Elise Stefanik's and the Michael Waltz and the Mike Huckabees of the world, that are going to go and try to help Israel understand something that they did not understand during Biden's term, that the U.S. does have their back, but only to a point. Maybe that's what the plan is. We'll help you keep what is sovereign, what is understood to be your soil, but this aggression against the Palestinians and Lebanese and all that, no more. It's not a very good set of reasoning. I understand that, but I think that's probably where it's not good in the sense of being able to have a reliable result. But I don't think there is any other option, because there is no other power in the Middle East that the United States can actually go to get the conflict to stop it. It's Israel. It's all about Israel. So that's why I think that's going on. As to Russia and Ukraine, it looks like we have a number of things in place to really help with that. Tulsi Gabbard, as Director of Intelligence, can straighten out the intelligence apparatus, which may get real information and help people down the line that use that intelligence to understand both what Russia does do and what it does not do, and what Ukraine does do and what it does not do. And same thing for the Chinese, and same thing for whoever else's problem in the world. And from good intelligence might come better decisions, and certainly better diplomacy, because it will be, it's difficult to think about it this way. It's very difficult to deal with somebody who lies to you and to the whole rest of the world about who you are. When somebody puts words in your mouth and broadcasts it to the world that this is what it really is, and then that person has no way to defend themselves because everybody sides with them, it's awful. It's awful, and it has to stop. And Tulsi Gabbard is ideally suited as a fair-minded woman who has faced war firsthand, which has the same case with Pete Hegseth. They both faced war as infantry, as on-the-ground people, as in the battlefield. And so this means that they know what war is firsthand, and they know it is something that if you fight it, you better win it, but it's better not to fight it at all if you don't have to, which is a very different point of view than neocon people have and neo-lib people have, and a very different point of view than these four-star generals who have never seen combat in their life, except for war games or something like that, and who spent most of their career flying a desk or driving a desk. It takes people who really have military experience to understand what is best for the military. So I'm going to start to close this up. This cabinet is built for the repairing of a country that is in deep, deep crisis. The United States has been slowly collapsing since, say, the 1960s, let's call it, and more rapidly in the 2000s through Obama's term, through Biden's term, even more so. Like it was like a roller coaster drop, plunging into the depths. And it's not just economic; it's social, it's cultural. It's it's the thing like Drag Queen Story Hour, where you can't feel safe putting your kids in kindergarten because you never know who's going to be reading fairy tales to them and what the fairy tales are going to be about. About a little boy that turns out to be queer or something like that, read by a man who's wearing lipstick and fake boobs, and just garishly ugly. This kind of stuff is so evil and so satanic that it cannot stop without the best and very determined people to come in and stop it. The border crossings will not stop without somebody who is very, very energized and very determined to stop it with no compromises. Tom Homan is the guy. Stefanik and Huckabee and all these people present a very, very strong message of support to Israel, but they also may be able to present very strong, don't do this to Israel. I hope anyway. Elon and Vivek can get, as Greg Gutfeld said in his program just recently, they are going to really help the government, and anybody who wants to help them is free to resign. Get out of the government job. It's going to be that. Homeland Security Advisor, Kristi Noem. These are really, really good people for the most part, I think. And I think the overall team that is being offered here is excellent. I don't, with the possible exception of Rubio, I am not sure how it could be made better. And I am kind of the opinion that Tulsi is in a better place as DNI than she would be as Sec State, which is where I wanted her to be. I hadn't even thought of DNI. So I think this is a massively smart arrangement. So where do we go from here? I think that it is important to not believe most of what is written. We saw this with the cabinet picks because a lot of articles were speculative. It is important to understand that the American mainstream media is doing two things. They're still looking for how to tear Trump down for the most part, and they still have to write news to entertain their readers and their viewers, okay? We have a 24/7 news cycle on the internet, on TV, cable TV, and so on. And so people have to come up with stories to entertain their viewers, otherwise they won't have viewers. For both of these reasons, they are writing highly speculative pieces that I think are intended to discourage the Trump voters, to make us believe that Trump is just going to be like every other president, and the neocons are going to win, or the neolibs are going to win, or the liberals are going to win, and all that kind of stuff, to discourage us, and maybe even to try to shape what actually happens, to try to shape Trump's picks by writing that he is going to pick somebody. Maybe they think that they can actually force it to happen, like what was going on the weekend before the election with that 10-point ahead Iowa poll. It was intended to manipulate the election probably as much as it was intended to try to shock it, And so there's a lot of that going around in the press. So how do you deal with that? Simple. If President Trump says it himself, you can probably take it to the bank. If Elon says it, you can take it to the bank. If Vivek says it, you can take it to the bank. If Tucker Carlson says it, you can take it to the bank. If Tulsi Gabbard says it, you can take it to the bank. If any one of these people on the cabinet post says it, you can probably take it to the bank. If it comes from anything secondhand, sources close to, sources familiar with, people familiar with the project, you get phrases like that, I wouldn't waste time of day with it. That was what the Washington Post did during the Russiagate articles. Sources say, unnamed sources say. There were no unnamed sources. Maybe there was a named source, the reporter writing the rumor. Okay, that we really need to be very careful about this right now, because even though the news media, it was good news. Los Angeles Times said it's going to throw out a whole bunch of its staff and start over and try to create fair and balanced news reporting. Great, that's a good piece of news, but let's see it happen. CNN is in the same situation. Fox probably will have to reshuffle even a little bit. Newsmax, while conservative, can probably try to influence things in a neocon way. It depends on who has a hold of what. So for now, I think we need to be of the mind that if it doesn't come straight from the horse's mouth, then it's not really worth our believing. It's not even worth our paying attention to. So that's one thing we can do. Two, be active. If you have contacts to the president, everybody will when he's inaugurated, but if you have contacts to the president now, if anybody does that listens to this, I'd be appreciative for that, because I'd like to have contact information for him to reach him directly. I have the ability through Twitter to reach at least Tucker and Tulsi's Twitter feeds for now and write them messages, but that may change, especially when Tulsi becomes DNI. Direct communication with these people is vital. As you guys, if you all voted for Trump, that's great, but our work is just beginning. It is not ending. This is the beginning. Those people are wonderful people. I I think they really want to make the country right, and I think they want to make relations with other countries right, including especially my adopted homeland here in Russia. But they won't be able to do it if they're just left to themselves with the pressures that are on them. We, the people, must speak to them, and we must speak. We must speak and understand, look, these guys are working for us, so we have to tell them what we want them to do. If they're working for us, that's the idea. That's the way the representative republic works. So to our representatives, to our senators, we have to get active in a way that probably has not been seen since the United States was founded as a nation. I will be that bold to say that. Direct involvement. No more the government is here to take care of me, because they took care of us all right for the last 4 years. Some of the weirdos that were passed over during the first Trump administration and through Obama before that, those people were voted in or brought in to take care of us, and they did too. And look what we got. Do you like being taken care of, or do you want to be able to take care of yourself? I know there are people that want to be taken care of, but I think there are a lot of us that voted for Trump that really just want the government to leave us alone and let us take care of ourselves, and for them to quit interfering with us. And this group of people seems to be set in the right places to go and actually create that, a government that minds its own business, minds it well, and lets us alone so that we can do what we do the best as American citizens. And to maybe be a little bit better informed about the world than we have been, because most of our people are woefully, woefully uninformed about things happening outside the United States. I think that it's very important for us to understand that there is a world outside our borders, and that selfish actions taken by people in our government have really pissed a lot of them off, and we ought to really try to do something to fix that. So with that, thank you for hanging on for the whole report. I hope it had something in it that was helpful. And this is, again, I am Seraphim Hennish, the American in Exile, and I will speak again with you when the time comes. Take care.